Okay, how's it going, everyone? So I recently watched Schindler's List, the Spielberg movie from 1993. He made it right after Jurassic Park, which is pretty crazy. I think he was actually making them kind of at the same time. And it won 7 Oscars, I guess, Best Picture, Best Director. It's an incredible movie, very powerful. It's very dark. I've only seen it a few times. It's an interesting choice that it's in black and white, of course, although it starts with a bit of colour, and there's a bit of colour throughout. If you haven't seen it, it's rightfully considered one of the greatest films ever made. Certainly one of the most powerful, one of the darkest kind of periods in human history that is, I still struggle to comprehend it or understand it or process it or deal with it. It's kind of, you can kind of imagine some of it and then you just have to, I don't know, you kind of just move on and think, one day, I'd like to learn more about it. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. I'll jump around with a lot of the parts of it. The music by John Williams is really incredible. There's like the main theme. It's a little, some of the intervals are a bit far, but it's very, yeah, I don't even know what the words are for it. Is it beautiful? Is it sad? Rich? It's, profound, I think, though. And there's another section which is, it's a bit similar. I think they're both in G minor, but they're kind of playing around the same chords and notes, and it may be influenced by some Jewish traditional music or something. There's a Jewish song in it. They are all a bit similar. They kind of, like I said, move around the same, I don't know, chords or themes or something like that. It's hard to know what else to talk about. The movie's crazy. Liam Neeson, I think, is really good as Oscar Schindler. As far as I know, it's pretty realistic. I don't know. I get annoyed when people online, they'll be talking about like really specific details that, that's not correct. They didn't actually have that type of typewriter in that year, or actually there's he never said that. He said this slightly different thing that is basically that, like, they worry about these little details. I just mainly care about the broad strokes being correct. And as far as I understand, it seems to be basically true. I don't know for sure though. Actually, before I forget, now that I've learnt more about economics, I was really surprised by how it's Oscar Schindler is like as a typical capitalist, in terms of he's self-interested. He wants to make money. He wants to make profits. I don't think he was particularly successful before World War II, but he sees it as an opportunity. He's an opportunist. But of course, under the circumstances, one of the things for him to do is to hire Jews. They're so cheap because they have no other options. But I find it interesting. That's the nature of capitalism. Your self-interest is to trade with others, to give jobs to people. And at least initially, I don't particularly think he's trying to help Jews or any group of people. But he's just hiring them. It ends up helping them. I just think it's interesting. A lot of people don't seem to understand that capitalists, you could say he's exploiting them, but the ones that he exploits are in a much better situation than the ones he doesn't exploit. These capitalist exploiters increase the options of the people they exploit. So it's not really exploitation, it's the wrong word. And of course, it's not his fault that this situation exists, that the Jews are being exterminated or their freedom is being taken away. He is just trying to make profit out of this situation, and in so doing, actually helping these Jews. And part of the reason is because it's cheaper to hire the Jews at that time than Poles or other groups of people. But going further than that, because he is a businessman and because he is self-interested, he does not want any of those Jews killed. It is really bad business. It's also bad business if things happen and he's not told about it. If a bunch of them are moved and he's not told, there's one day when none of them come to work. And so he goes out and rides on his horse, and we see... This is one of the great things about the movie, I think, is it doesn't try... That's another criticism I've seen online. It's like, this doesn't show the full Holocaust. How can a single movie show all of that? You know, you could have I'm going to watch the documentary series Shoah soon, which I think is the Jewish term for Holocaust. Maybe that's a bit more thorough, but like, this is just a movie. I think it does an incredible job of showing glimpses and giving you a sense of it. It's not trying to be the full picture. It's just insane. It's not a valid criticism. You could say that about any movie, that it only shows some little part. It doesn't show the full existence of the universe. It didn't show the Big Bang, you know, it didn't... Anyway, but I think it is incredible the way we see glimpses of what's going on. And yeah, so we see them taken out of their houses and all kinds of scenes. And what I got to really point out is Spielberg is such a talented director, right? There's no denying he can do action and thrills and, you know, like Jaws, Close Encounters, the Indiana Jones movies, E.T., you know, wonder, amazement, sci-fi, adventure. All of these kinds of genres and really kind of magical, exciting, emotional moments. And he's so reserved, and I don't think clinical is the right word, but just, I think Roger Ebert in his review said how he really kind of restrains himself, but his passion, Steven Spielberg's passion and skill kind of come through in every frame of the movie. I feel like there's a lot of truth to that. This is a very talented filmmaker who is, kind of taking himself out, and yet he's always there. There's a lot of skill in the way it's done. And it's very powerful, but it's not taking the easy way out. It's really just showing... I don't know how to put it. I think it's incredible. It's so disciplined and really well made, and there's so many really powerful moments. It's also, it's highly disturbing parts of it, and yet, because of the way it's filmed, it never goes too far. It doesn't show too much. It shows enough that, like, there's the horror, but it moves on. We're always kind of safe. We know we're just watching a movie, we're being guided through, we get the idea, we move on to something else. And it's also, this is hard to explain, but it's almost slapstick in a way. It's like slapstick comedy. Like, at a certain point, it is almost comedic, the way, because these people are just getting shot. Like, there's a woman who says, this is unstable. I'm an engineer, and this thing needs to be, and she's telling them, and she's very passionate, and she's also, just this passionate young human being. And there's a part where she gets moved to in front of the camera, like she's been told, they're like, Amon Goethe says, shoot her. And it's just so casual, and then she's taken aside and just shot, and the blood, and it's like two different things. On the one side, it's absolutely awful and horrific, and, it's the kind of thing that you could just pause it and go outside and just... think for a few minutes, or just take a breath, and it's so messed up, and it's real. This kind of thing happened heaps. Anyway, and on the other hand, it's kind of comedic. It's like just kill her, boom, and we're done with that. It's because the Germans are so casual. The Nazis, they're just, and the movie really goes with that. There's a part where a boy runs away, and then they bring him back, and then the guy just shoots him with a gun, and the movie just kind of keeps going. It doesn't have some big dramatic close-up. It just keeps going, and it's like, you just saw a kid got shot, and it is a bit like slapstick comedy in a way. I'm not saying it's funny, but there's something, it's like the only way to process it. You just have to kind of move on and be like, oh well, we're in this weird fantasy comedy circus, upside down Alice in Wonderland place where people just randomly get shot for no reason at all. That's, and there's a German shouting at Istak Stern, Ben Kingsley. I think he's very good in it, and they're shouting like, "Voice in your documenta," or whatever, and he's like, where is it? He can't find it. He finally gets it out, and then moves away, and then someone else gets shot right in front of him, and he's just, and there's again, the way it's kind of, there's a lot of handheld stuff, but you don't even notice it. You don't notice the camera. You forget there's a camera and you're just seeing things happen. I think that's why also it works, because it's not like dwelling too much on things. So these things kind of just happen, and then he's just there, just like someone just got shot next to him. He just kind of has to walk, and it is almost like a comedy in a way, in a very weird, obviously very dark way, but it makes it more watchable. And it also means that you need to, yeah, it's tricky to process. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. There's also some actual comedy, like when he's hiring secretaries, and he has each woman is typing and looking at him, and he's like looking at them, and then each one he gets closer, and she's just like, you know, one at a time, and he's like looking, he's basically eye to eye, and then it cuts to, it's like a montage, and then it cuts straight to one that's got a cigarette, just type quick, older lady, and he's looking away, leaning back. Just the body language is very powerful. That part is deliberately very funny. It's also kind of funny in a way, the number of people that he's bribing, and just the way he's just so charming and has a way. He's a very likable Oscar Schindler, but yeah, and he kind of fake. One piece of advice I got a lot is fake it till you make it. I think it makes a lot of sense. As a DJ, I was told, you know, you're kind of nervous the first time. You just walk in, you're dressed appropriately, you've got a bunch of CDs, you've got the equipment, speakers, you're the DJ. And people just think, oh, hey, there's the DJ. You then fill that role. As long as you don't do anything too stupid, you're the DJ. And you then have that like authority, that status. As a clown as well, I was nervous the first time, but then you walk in and you got makeup and all this outfit, and kids just see you, and adults, they just see you as a clown, and they're like, look, it's a clown, and you say, hey, and they're like, excited, and you're like, do you know what we're gonna do today? And balloons, and you start juggling, and they're so impressed, and then it's like, okay, you're a clown. I get that. That didn't take much. Anyway, so he kind of just goes in confident and just orders drinks for people, just spends, even if he doesn't have much money, and he just gives this impression of having more power. And then, of course, that becomes very important for him to manipulate the rules too. That's another thing. When you have limitations from government, people tend to go around them. You tend to have black markets. A big part of it is that there's all this black market trading going on. He gets involved in that, but so he has to bribe people to make sure they allow it to happen. And that's how he gets the women who accidentally go to Auschwitz. And that, again, I don't know if that really happened, I'd have to look it up. But that was so scary. I mean, that's one of the most scary things, you know, very scary period of history overall. The Holocaust in particular, World War II in general, you know, going in, being made to strip and having their hair shaved off. And there's scenes where they're going through all the belongings that, yeah, is just heartbreaking. All these, like there'll be jewellery, there'll be pots and pans and other clothes, and it's just been all piled, and it's like, it's so dehumanizing. You're now nothing but flesh and blood. You're not even a name, and not even a human being. You're just a number, and you're going to be a carcass. They're going to just burn you and take your stuff and just put it in piles and take what's useful, and you're just now numbers, you're just money. Anyway, it's one of the most disturbing things. And the fact that we're in there with the women and we don't know what's going to happen. Like, some people have said, some critics have said, oh, it's a cheap thing. I don't think so. I think it works. It's kind of like a clever way to just let us experience some of the extreme horror of the Holocaust, and then a little bit of relief, and like, okay, this movie's not going with that, but we're getting a bit of a sense of what it would be like. And I've heard things about it, and I don't understand how it's possible. I'm still curious, how do you get, how did the Nazis do this? Anyway, so I guess that's the thing with Oskar Schindler. He's not some really, really good, noble hero. He's just decent. He doesn't see why they're killing. I think he seems to fundamentally see it as wrong, and yet at the same time, I don't think he's going to go way out of his way, but until later on. And there's some powerful things, like there's a thing with the little girl in red, which is very haunting. I think, again, some critics have been like, is that real? Who was that based on? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It can be based on one or two anecdotes. Do you suppose there might have been a little girl at one point or another walking around? Could that ever have happened? doesn't matter. It's just part of the story, and it's symbolic. It's not meant to be anything more than that. And I think it's really just a loss of innocence. And it's just a way to focus the film and focus a moment for Schindler where it's like a turning point, where it's like it's gone too far, so that he just and that's, I guess, the really powerful part, is when he kind of consciously decides, basically, instead of running away with all his money, to spend his fortune. And the movie gives the impression he's made a huge amount of money, to spend all of it to save as many Jews as he can, which ends up being, in some ways you could say it's a huge number of like 1,000 or 1,500, or I forget the number. Let's say about 1,000 Jews. On the other hand, you could say that's, considering how much money he had, like it was so expensive just to get them. And it's heartbreaking near the end, very powerful, really good acting by Liam Neeson. And again, the directing, it's so focused and reserved, and I think it really earns this moment. I've heard some people say I think really stupid things, like the movie is really good and then it's too sentimental at the end. I don't get it. I think those people, it's like they don't have emotions, or they can't, I don't know, I don't get it. You know, when they kind of make a ring for him, and it's just kind of a modest gift, but it's, you know, whoever saves one life saves the world entire, from the Talmud. It's such a, again, I don't know anything about, I guess the Talmud is maybe like the Quran or the Bible, but for Jewish people, Judaism, I don't know, some kind of special text. But it's a nice saying. I think there's a lot of truth to that as well. A lot of people say, you know, if it saves one life, it's worth it. Which is true, as long as there's no other costs involved. If you save one life, but it costs $10 million, and that $10 million could have been used to save 20 lives, it may not be worth it, you know what I mean? Anyway, but he's just kind of, I think, overwhelmed at that point. And again, it may be a bit of a Hollywood dramatic moment that's not based on what literally happened, but I think it's very appropriate, and it works. We want an emotional climax for the movie, and the way he kind of just drops it and then picks it up and feels overwhelmed, like I just did what anyone would have done, like, you know, thank yourselves, you know. And he thinks, why I could have saved another one. This car, why do I still have this car, this pin? 2 more people, one more. What, he would have given me one. This one more person could have been alive, and I didn't save them. That moment is very powerful. The first time I saw it, it probably affected me. It's one of the most deeply affected I've ever been by a movie. I just felt the weight of life. It really, we often take it for granted, but you think a person's life, like, it shouldn't be on me or anyone else to decide if someone gets to live or not. And for him to feel that kind of guilt of, like, he didn't save someone. Someone could be standing in front of him along with the others, and he didn't do that, and he feels so guilty, but they're saying, you've done so much. And yeah, it's very powerful. I also think it's really nice, apparently Spielberg, I forget the details. Some things about it are different, like he didn't take any profits for it, or something like that, or maybe all the royalties go to some kind of charity. I'm not sure. I do like the end sequence where they have the real life survivors in the grave of Oscar Schindler, and they're all putting the rocks, and then it's just overwhelming. It's just full of rocks, just covered in rocks, of these people that are alive thanks to him. Of course, again, I saw some stupid criticisms online. People were saying how they had more struggles after that. Like, fine, but the movie's over. The movie's finished once that factory finishes and he runs away. And it is very uplifting, and it's, yeah, I think a very profound movie, and a very clever way to take, I guess it's based on the book Schindler's Ark by Thomas Keneally, which I've heard is good. I'll probably try to read it at some point or listen to an audiobook, but I guess it's like a positive way to try to tackle, like, one of the darkest periods in human history. As I said, get a bit of a feel for it, document some of it pretty accurately, I think, and vividly, and yet with some emotion, with, what am I trying to say? Like, making it still part of the movie. It's not like so disturbing and just depressing, but it's watchable, and then have this really positive, beautiful message at the center. That's like, even in this pure darkness, there's hope. I think Amon Goetz is an interesting character played by Ralph Fiennes. I think it is a good choice that because, you know, you could have had someone that was a bit more normal, but did evil during the war for some reason. But having the kind of pure evil or the psychotic, I think this happens with some fraction of police, maybe only 5%, maybe 1% or less, who they like power. Some people like power, and they're going to try to get a job where they can use that, where they can abuse that power. I think there's some truth to that. There are some people that have issues, in other dark areas. Like, you could have some people that are pedophiles, and then they're going to try to find jobs, like, I don't know, I guess you have issues with priests sometimes. Again, a small percentage, or other occupations where they get access to children, or they're in a position of being trusted, and other things like that. Again, hopefully a small percentage, but Amon Goeth seems to be that kind of a sadist, who ends up with a lot of power and just randomly kills people. It is, again, kind of funny the way Oskar Schindler tries to influence him and say, real power is like when you can kill someone but you don't, Goeth is like kind of drunk, I pardon you, yeah. And so he lets one or two people go, and it's just weird. The movie, it's just kind of feels odd, but it's like there's little bit of hope, but then of course he reverts back to, I pardon you in the mirror, and then he's just goes out and just kills this kid. Again, I'm kind of laughing at the abstract. It is kind of comedic, like it didn't get anywhere. It was a noble trait. So Oskar Schindler's trying to use some influence to lessen the impact, but it's how did the Holocaust, the gears, the wheels, how did they get going, and how did they do that? Like, didn't they say, what are we doing? Like, this is too far, like, should we stop? I don't know. There's the part where Oskar Schindler's trying to get them to water down the Jews in the train, and then Amon Goeth is like, you're giving them hope. That's cruel. I don't know. It is kind of cruel in a way. I mean, but that's the thing. This one man, Oskar Schindler, who's a decent person in indecent times, right? He's powerless, except he manages to spend heaps of money and just have that little pocket of life in the, it's like Ishtak says about the list. It's, this is hope, it's a good, and around it lies the gulf, something like that. Alright, I'll leave it there. It's a very powerful movie, very moving, thought-provoking, and it's interesting. I think most people really like it, they're really impressed by it, and yet it's not the kind of movie you like to watch again and again, generally. Having said that, I feel like I probably should watch it again, like slightly more regularly, to just appreciate the art, the way it's filmed, the way it gets the effects. It's relatively very few movies are so good that you forget you're watching a movie and you just go through it. And this movie is one of them. Like, I mean, when I say one of the few, I mean less than 10 or 20 movies ever made in history that I can just watch and I basically forget I'm watching a movie. I'm just in it. Anyway, alright. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.